Today, we are diving into some really fascinating research that looks at the human heart a little differently, not just as a muscle, but as a biological engine, an engine that can actually run low on power. So the big question is, what if we could give it a jumpstart?
I mean, really think about that. What if we could recharge a failing heart right at the cellular level, almost as simply as we charge a battery? You know, it sounds a lot like science fiction, but a recent study explored this exact idea. So let's get into it.
Okay, so first things first, we've got to understand the core problem that millions of people are facing. And that is the heart's very own energy crisis. See, when a heart starts to fail, it isn't just tired. It's actually experiencing a massive energy shortage. The muscle itself becomes too weak to do its main job, which is pumping blood all through your body. But to really get what's going on, we need to zoom way in.
So, let's meet the cardiomyocytes. These are the tiny, microscopic workhorses that make up the heart muscle. I mean, every single heartbeat you have is because these cells are all contracting together. They are the ones doing all of the heavy lifting 24/7.
And if you look inside each one of those cells, you'll find these guys, mitochondria. The best way to think of them as tiny little power plants. Their whole job is to produce a molecule called ATP, and ATP is basically the energy currency for all of our cells. No ATP, no power. Simple as that.
And this, right here, is where the problem really starts. In a failing heart, those mitochondrial power plants, they get damaged. They start to break down. They just can't generate enough ATP to keep up with the heart's huge energy demands. And what you get is an engine that's just running on fumes. So that leaves us with a huge question. How do you fix the power plants?
Well, this brings us to the really ingenious idea at the heart of this research. What if the solution wasn't some new drug, but a gentle electrical boost? The central question the scientists were asking was this: could a really small, carefully applied electrical current act like a jumpstart for these failing mitochondria? Could it kind of nudge them back into working at full capacity? So the tool they decided to use to test this was something called a microcurrent. Now, we're not talking about a big electrical shock here. These are incredibly small, gentle currents. The whole idea is just to stimulate the cells, not to jolt them.
The theory was that this gentle electrical push could actually speed up the chemical reactions inside the mitochondria, which would help them produce more of that precious ATP. It's kind of like hitting a turbocharge button on a battery that's just about to die. So how on earth did they test this idea?
All right, let's take a look at the really clever experiment they designed to put this whole theory to the test.
Okay, so here's the breakdown. First, they took heart cells from rats that were bred to have high blood pressure, because that condition often leads to heart problems that are a lot like the ones we see in humans. Then they split these cells into 3 different groups in the lab. Group 1 was the control group. It got no electricity at all. Group 2 got a low microcurrent, and Group 3 got a slightly higher one. They let this whole setup run for 72 hours, and then it was the moment of truth. They measured the ATP, the actual energy that each group of cells produced. Now, when we say low and high, it's really important to get the scale here. The low current was just 10 microamperes. The high one was 100 microamperes. To put that in perspective for you, that is millions of times smaller than the current coming out of a standard wall outlet. These are exceptionally tiny amounts of electricity designed to be therapeutic, not disruptive.
So the stage was set. The experiment ran its course, and the results, well, they weren't just a little surprising, they were absolutely dramatic. You can really see what happened here. Over on the left, that's the baseline energy made by the control group, the cells that got no current. But then look at the other two. Both the low and the high microcurrent groups had this massive increase in ATP production. It looked like the jumpstart was really working.
Let's put a hard number on that. The cells that were stimulated with just that tiny 10 microamp current, they produced nearly double the energy, a 98.4% increase in ATP compared to the cells that got nothing. I mean, that result alone is pretty remarkable.
But then you look at the high microcurrent group. In that case, the energy production just skyrocketed. They measured a staggering 172.3% increase in ATP. That is almost triple the energy output of the control cells. Just incredible.
So the bottom line is this. The experiment confirmed their hypothesis in a really big way. These tiny, gentle currents triggered a huge, statistically significant boost in energy production inside these heart cells. The little power plants were officially back online.
Okay, this is all incredibly exciting data from a lab, of course, but what does it all mean for the future? You know, could this actually become a treatment for people one day?
Well, the researchers themselves were very cautiously optimistic. In their own words, they said the data suggests this technique increases energy production and this is the important part, it may be potentially relevant to the treatment of heart failure. That right there is the key takeaway, a potential new path forward.
And that's exactly why this matters so much. Instead of just trying to manage symptoms, this research points to a whole new way of thinking. Treating the root cause of the weakness by recharging the heart's own cells. It's all about fixing the energy crisis right where it's happening.
Now, of course, this is still very early stage research, but it leaves us with this powerful and really hopeful question. You know, we've figured out how to recharge our phones, our laptops, our cars. Could a similar idea, just refined down to a microscopic and gentle level, one day become a powerful new tool to recharge the very engine of life? It's a tiny spark of an idea that could truly change everything. Thanks for joining me.